to incentives for interlocal service delivery.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 97, noes 3.
Ayes 97, noes 3. The bill is passed.
House Bill 462, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to ultrasound requirement as part of informed consent for abortion.
The gentleman from Henrico, Mr. Morrissey.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I listened carefully to the debate yesterday on this bill, and I got to be frank. I think that the debate was less than honest. Indeed, I think it was the proponents of the argument were a bit hypocritical and disingenuous, at the very least. And I'll say this from this perspective. I tend to vote on pro-life on a lot of these bills. And unfortunately, this bill was couched.
Speaker.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Is the gentleman's speech proper under Rule 57? This is about the fifth time that he has called on the integrity of the House members.
I would agree, and I'm going to admonish the gentleman and ask him to try and choose his words a little more carefully from now on.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. And I'll do that mindful, Mr. Speaker, that at no time was I attacking anybody's credibility, but I'll explain to the Speaker and the body why I feel that the debate was disingenuous. Disingenuous for the following reason, Mr. Speaker. This bill was couched in a pro-health, pro-woman's health issue, when in actuality it wasn't that. It was an anti-abortion or a pro-life issue, which is fine. Many of us support that. But that's not the way it came across. And I'll give you specific examples why it didn't come across that way. We had yesterday, one of the amendments to this bill was a suggestion that during the early stages of pregnancy, the first 6 to 8 weeks, that it was a highly invasive procedure, and that government ought not to be involved in that highly invasive procedure. The delegate from Alexandria proposed that, was criticized by the other side, and they countered their argument by saying that it offsets an even more invasive procedure, to wit, an abortion. I think the argument goes somewhat like this. I'm not going to support an invasive procedure, to wit, the ultrasound, in order to prevent a more invasive one. It doesn't make sense. Additionally, and the reason I said it was disingenuous, is that earlier the patron of this bill, Delegate Byron, said repeatedly that government ought not to be involved in the HPV vaccination issue. Government ought to stay out of it. It's not government's affair. It's simply between family and God and doctor. However, hypocritical, I said, because the complete opposite position is taken now, Mr. Speaker. It's okay to be invasive.
You know, I'm going to ask the gentleman to speak to the merits of the bill and not to attack testimony from another member of this House. You've done this time and time again, and we're not going to put up with it.
Mr. Speaker, and let me end by saying this. I noticed in an article, in a, not an op-ed piece, a letter to the editor by an OBGYN. This OBGYN, who I don't know, Dr. Johnson from Mannequin-Sabot, who I've never spoken to, is against abortions. And he said in his letter, I have chosen not to perform these abortions. I support my colleagues who chose to do so. But then he went on to say that this ultrasound is a procedure without a medical necessity. It forces the woman to be subject to an invasive procedure. And that's the point, Mr. Speaker, that I've been trying to make, perhaps somewhat inartfully. That this is an invasive procedure. It involves government in something that only should involve God and family and doctor. And for that reason, Mr. Speaker, and that reason alone, I'm voting no.
Gentleman from Alexandria, Ms. Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. I want us to just take a deep breath for a second and forget our own personal feelings and think about what happened on the House floor yesterday and this bill. We are